Hello, everyone. I am the sleep storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you from and what time are you listening? Now get comfortable and relax. The winds of Westeros whisper through time, carrying with them the echoes of legends long past. Tonight, as you rest beneath the vast expanse of stars, let the tales of great houses and noble lineages cradle you into a peaceful slumber. Close your eyes and imagine a land where mighty banners flutter atop towering castles, where the weight of destiny bends the will of kings, and where honor and ambition intertwine like the roots of ancient trees. The realm of Westeros, shaped by fire, blood, and steel, has been home to many noble families, each leaving an indelible mark upon history. Tonight, we embark on a journey through the stories of these houses, their triumphs, betrayals, and legacies, beginning with a house that soared higher than any other, the Targaryens. Long before their reign over Westeros began, the Targaryens were but one of many noble families in the fabled land of Valyria, a civilization of dragon lords whose knowledge of magic and steel made them near divine. But Valyria was doomed, and it was the prophetic vision of a single woman, Daenerys the Dreamer, that saved her kin. She saw the great catastrophe before it came, and her father, heedful of her warnings, led their family to the isolated island of Dragonstone, far from the looming destruction. When Valyria burned in a cataclysm of fire and ruin, the Targaryens alone survived, their fate forever altered. Generations passed, and then came Aegon, a man of singular ambition. With his sister wives by his side and dragons in the sky, he set forth to unite the 7 kingdoms under his rule. Kings fell, castles burned, and the land trembled before the might of Balerion the Black Dread, Vhagar, and Meraxes. When the conquest was done, Aegon sat upon the Iron Throne, and the Targaryen dynasty ruled for nearly 3 centuries. But even the greatest houses fall, and fire that once illuminated the world can just as easily consume it. The madness of a later king, the rise of rebellion, and the storm of war brought an end to their rule. Yet the blood of the dragon is not so easily extinguished. While the Targaryens once soared, another house, born of conquest and strength, would eventually claim the Iron Throne. House Baratheon, forged in the fires of Aegon's invasion, traced its lineage to Orys Baratheon, the great general and rumored half-brother of Aegon himself. As a reward for his loyalty, Orys was given the Stormlands, and from his victory arose a house known for its unyielding resilience. Centuries later, another Baratheon, Robert, would rebel against the very house that once created his own. Fueled by love, vengeance, and the weight of oppression, Robert Baratheon led an uprising that shattered Targaryen rule, and with his hammer, he broke the last vestiges of their power. He took the throne, but as the years passed, peace eluded him. Brothers turned against brothers, and the kingdom he fought to win slipped through his grasp. By the time war came again, Baratheon brothers Robert, Stannis, and Renly had all met untimely ends, leaving their house's future uncertain. Only Gendry, the blacksmith's son turned noble, carried forth their name, legitimized but untested in the Game of Thrones. Now, as the banners of the Stormlands fade into the mist, our journey takes us further north, where winter is always near, and honor is heavier than gold. The Starks of Winterfell, a house as old as the first men, stood as guardians of the North for thousands of years. It is said that their ancestor, Bran the Builder, raised the mighty walls of Winterfell and played a hand in crafting the wall itself, a frozen barrier against the unknown terrors beyond. Unlike the shifting loyalties of other noble houses, the Starks held to their oaths with an unbreakable will, bound to the words they carried: winter is coming. When Aegon arrived in Westeros, the king in the north, Torrhen Stark, gathered his forces, ready to fight. But upon witnessing the might of dragons, he knelt rather than see his people burn. Though some called him the king who knelt, his choice preserved the Stark lineage and their rule over the north. But peace is never permanent. Generations later, another Stark, Eddard, would be drawn into the Game of Thrones, where honor and justice meant little. His death shattered the realm, igniting a war that claimed the lives of kings and plunged Westeros into chaos. Yet, despite every hardship, the Stark name endured. The North remembers, and so long as Winterfell stands, there will always be a Stark to hold it, as the North remains draped in frost and loyalty. The South gleams with gold and ambition. House Lannister, rulers of Casterly Rock, stood atop a mountain of wealth, their power rivaled only by their cunning. Legend speaks of Lan the Clever, the trickster who stole Casterly Rock from its previous lords and laid the foundation for his descendants to become the richest house in the realm. With gold flowing from their mines, the Lannisters wielded their wealth as a weapon, ensuring that no debt was left unpaid. They played the Game of Thrones like no other, using influence, alliances, and betrayal as tools for dominance. Tywin Lannister, a man both feared and respected, restored the house's greatness after years of weakness, shaping his children, Cersei, Jaime, and Tyrion, into pawns of his grand design. But even the strongest fortress can crumble from within. Betrayals, miscalculations, and the consequences of their own ruthless ambition led to the near extinction of their line. By the time the dust settled, only Tyrion remained, the last Lannister standing, carrying the weight of his family's legacy. The great houses rise, and the great houses fall. Some are burned by dragonfire, others undone by their own schemes. But in the end, history remembers them all, etching their names into the stones of Westeros, whispering their deeds to those who listen. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, let the echoes of their stories guide you into dreams of castles and crowns, of victories and tragedies, of power and its price. Would you like me to continue with the next part? # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 2, as the golden lions of the West command wealth and influence. Another house, draped in in emerald and ambition, seeks power through charm rather than conquest. House Tyrell of Highgarden, stewards turned rulers, flourished in the fertile lands of the Reach. Unlike the Lannisters, who seized power through force and manipulation, the Tyrells ascended through loyalty, strategy, and carefully woven alliances. Their rise began when the last king of the Reach, Mern Ix of House Gardener, perished in dragonfire during Aegon's conquest. Seeing wisdom where others saw only pride, Harlan Tyrell bent the knee and was rewarded with dominion over Highgarden. From that moment on, the Tyrells ruled not through war, but through influence, their words and wealth shaping the politics of Westeros. They were neither conquerors nor warriors, but they understood something far more valuable, the power of perception. The roses of Highgarden bloomed, thriving in times of war and peace alike. Their vast armies, second only to the combined forces of the North, gave them strength, while their riches and agricultural abundance made them indispensable to the realm. Though the Tyrells lacked the raw brutality of other houses, their cunning rivaled even the Lannisters. At the height of their power stood Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, a matriarch whose sharp wit cut deeper than swords. It was she who maneuvered her granddaughter, Margaery, into marriages that placed House Tyrell on the path to the throne, first with Renly Baratheon, then with Joffrey, and finally with Tommen. With each union, their influence grew, and soon they stood poised to rule. But power, like a delicate rose, is fleeting. Betrayal from within the capital led to their downfall, and in one swift act of vengeance, fire consumed Highgarden. Olenna, defiant to the end, met her fate with words that would be remembered forever. The Tyrells, once among the most powerful families in Westeros, were no more, yet not all houses sought power in grand halls and royal courts. In the heights of the Vale, where the winds howl against the peaks, and the sky is clearer than anywhere else in Westeros, House Arryn stood as guardians of an impregnable fortress. The Eyrie, nestled high in the mountains, was a place untouched by war. No army had ever breached its defenses. No siege had ever brought it to ruin. House Arryn, descendants of the Andals, prided themselves on their honor, their words as steadfast as the mountains they ruled. They were not conquerors nor schemers, but defenders of the realm, unwavering in their duty. During the reign of the Mad King, it was Jon Arryn who defied tyranny when Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark sought refuge in his halls. When the king demanded their heads, Jon chose rebellion over compliance, standing against the Targaryens in a war that would change history. His wisdom and leadership were instrumental in securing Robert's throne, and in return, he became Hand of the King, guiding the realm with steady hands. But peace is fragile, and when Jon Arryn fell to treachery, it was not war that consumed the Vale, but whispers and shadows. His widow, Lysa Arryn, driven mad by grief and manipulation, isolated herself and her young son, leaving their house vulnerable. The Vale, once a symbol of strength and nobility, became a place of uncertainty. It It was only in the final years of turmoil that the house found stability once more, with young Robin Arryn stepping into his role, ensuring that the falcon of House Arryn continued to soar, far to the south, where the sun blazes upon red sands, and the people are as untamed as the land itself. House Martell of Dorne stood apart from the rest of Westeros. Unlike the other kingdoms, Dorne was never conquered by Aegon's dragons. Their warriors, swift and cunning, fought not with brute force, but with patience and precision. When Aegon came with fire and blood, the Dornish did not meet him in open battle, but instead retreated into their deserts and mountains, striking like vipers when least expected. Time and time again, they eluded the Targaryen forces, until even the might of dragons could not break them. And so, rather than conquer Dorne, the Targaryens made peace, forging an alliance through marriage instead of war. The words of House Martell, unbowed, unbent, unbroken, were more than a motto. They were a promise. Though they joined the realm, they never forgot their independence, and their legacy was built upon pride and vengeance. When Elia Martell, sister to Prince Doran and the fearless Oberyn, was slain during Robert's rebellion, her family never forgave those responsible. Oberyn, the Red Viper, sought justice, challenging the Mountain in a duel that ended in brutal tragedy. Even after his death, Dorne's thirst for retribution did not fade, leading to a series of plots that ultimately left the house leaderless. In the end, House Martell, once the fiercest of rulers, faded into obscurity, their once mighty influence slipping into the sands, while the South was defined by heat and passion. The seas surrounding the Iron Islands were ruled by a house as relentless as the storms that battered their shores. House Greyjoy, the Ironborn, lived and died by the strength of their ships and the might of their raiders. They did not till the land nor build grand castles. Instead, they took what they wanted, their way of life shaped by the harsh and unforgiving sea. We do not sow, their words declared, a testament to their belief in reaving, pillaging, and claiming dominion over the waters. At their height, the Greyjoys sought to break free from the rule of the Iron Throne, with Balon Greyjoy launching a rebellion that saw his fleets burn and his sons taken from him. His youngest, Theon, raised among the Starks, lived torn between two worlds, loyalty to the family that raised him, and duty to the father who never truly accepted him. His choices, riddled with regret and redemption, shaped the fate of House Greyjoy. Meanwhile, Yara, fierce and determined, fought to lead her people where her father failed. Yet it was the return of Euron, ruthless and ambitious, that plunged the Iron Islands into further chaos. He sought to rule not just the seas, but the realm itself, making enemies of all who stood in his way. But as the tides turned and the final battles played out, Euron met his end, and Yara remained, the last true heir of her house. Whether she would lead the Ironborn into a new era or into the depths of the sea remained to be seen. As the great houses of Westeros rose and fell, their legacies endured, carved into the bones of history. Some thrived through wisdom, others perished through folly, but all left behind stories tales of love and loss, of power and ruin. And as the night deepens, their echoes continue to drift through the winds of time, lulling you into dreams of kingdoms past and futures yet unwritten. Would you like me to continue with part 3? # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 3, the history of Westeros, is woven with the triumphs and tragedies of its great houses. But few have known both glory and treachery as deeply as House Tully. Rulers of the Riverlands, the Tullys built their legacy not on conquest, but on honor and duty. Nestled in Riverrun, where the waters of the Trident flow, they served as lords of a land often torn apart by war. Their words, family, duty, honor, spoke to their values, placing loyalty above all else. Though not a house of great warriors, their bonds of kinship made them formidable in their own right. During Aegon's conquest, House Tully chose the path of wisdom, siding with the invaders rather than resisting them. This loyalty secured their status among the great houses of Westeros, but their true test came generations later, during the chaos of Robert's rebellion. Hoster Tully, the head of the house, bound his family to the cause of the rebels through marriage, his daughter Catelyn to Eddard Stark, and his other daughter Lysa to Jon Arryn. These alliances solidified a powerful network of support against the Targaryens. When the war was won, the Tullys stood strong, but their troubles had only just begun. Years later, when war returned to Westeros, Riverrun became a battleground once more. The tragedy of the Red Wedding saw the fall of Robb Stark. But it was not just the wolves of Winterfell who suffered. House Tully too paid the price. The Freys, once vassals of Riverrun, turned against them, orchestrating the massacre that ended the Stark rebellion. The Tullys, betrayed and weakened, fell from power. Edmure Tully, the last known heir, was captured and used as a pawn, his house reduced to a shadow of its former self. As the rivers continued to flow, so too did the memory of House Tully. But whether they would rise again or fade into history remained unknown. While honor was the guiding force of House Tully, fear and cruelty defined another lineage, the Dread Lords of the Dreadfort, House Bolton. An ancient house of the North, the Boltons had once been rivals to the Starks, refusing to bow to Winterfell even as other lords pledged fealty. Their legacy was written in blood, their banners bearing the symbol of their most infamous tradition, the Flayed Man. Long before they bent the knee to the kings in the North, they were known for their horrifying practice of flaying their enemies alive, even boasting of wearing the skins of Stark lords as cloaks. Though forced to abandon the practice when they swore loyalty to Winterfell, the Boltons never forgot their old ways. It was Roose Bolton who ensured their name would be forever cursed in the halls of history. A man of cold calculation, he betrayed Robb Stark at the Red Wedding, delivering the North to the Lannisters in exchange for the title of Warden of the North. But it was his son, Ramsay Bolton, who would make their house infamous beyond redemption. Cruel beyond measure, Ramsay ruled through fear. his sadism unmatched even in a world of ruthless men. Yet even the most fearsome houses can crumble. And as the banners of the Bolton flayed man rose over Winterfell, they were soon torn down by the vengeance of the Starks. When Ramsay fell, devoured by his own hounds, House Bolton perished with him. The North, at last, was free of its darkest shadow. But for every house that ruled with cruelty, there were others that sought power through opportunity. House Frey, keepers of the twins, was one such house, less ancient than the Boltons, less noble than the Tullys, but no less ambitious. Their stronghold, the twins, was more than just a castle. It was a gateway, the only bridge across the green fork of the Trident for miles. This position gave them power, allowing them to charge tolls and dictate passage for armies and travelers alike. For centuries, House Frey remained loyal to House Tully, but their allegiance was not bound by honor, it was bound by self-interest. Their lord, Walder Frey, was a man who remembered every slight and nursed every grudge. When Robb Stark insulted his house by breaking a marriage pact, Walder saw his chance. What followed was the Red Wedding, an act of betrayal so vile that it became legend. Robb Stark, his mother, his bannermen, all slaughtered under the guise of hospitality. House Frey gained favor with the Lannisters, but their victory was short-lived. In the end, vengeance came not in the form of an army, but in the silent steps of a single assassin. Arya Stark, wearing the face of a servant, ended Walder Frey's long life with a blade to the throat. One by one, she eliminated his sons, leaving House Frey in ruins. Though some of his descendants lived, the Frey name would never again command the respect or fear it once had. While the Freys fell in betrayal, another house built itself upon cunning. House Baelish was never one of the great houses, never one of noble blood, but it was a name that reshaped the course of history. Its most infamous son, Petyr Baelish, known as Littlefinger, was a master of manipulation. Born into a minor house with no army, no wealth, and no claim to power, he carved his path with words sharper than any sword. From his youth, Baelish was driven by ambition, his love for Catelyn Stark fueling his desire to rise above his station. When she chose Eddard Stark over him, he did not forget. Instead, he set his sights on a greater goal, not just power, but control. Through deceit and betrayal, he orchestrated the chaos that led to war, whispering lies that turned friend against friend, kingdom against kingdom. He was the architect of the conflict that shattered Westeros, setting in motion the events that would bring kings to their knees. For a time, it seemed his schemes would never end, that he would always be one step ahead. But in the end, even the cleverest of players can miscalculate. Sansa Stark, his former pupil, saw through his manipulations, and with the judgment of her family, his game came to an end. His own words turned against him, his crimes laid bare before those he sought to control. As he pleaded for his life, Arya's blade silenced him. House Baelish, a house that had never held true power, had risen higher than most only to fall, as all ambitious men must. And so, the houses of Westeros continued to rise and fall, their fates determined by war, by marriage, by treachery, and honor alike. Some sought power through fire and blood, others through steel and gold. But in the end, only one truth remained: nothing lasts forever. As you drift further into sleep, let the echoes of these ancient names fade into the quiet night, their legacies resting in the pages of history, waiting to be remembered once more. Would you like me to continue with part 4? # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 4. Beyond the blood-stained fields of the Riverlands and the treacherous games of court, another house, bound to the north by duty and resilience, stood against the test of time: House Mormont of Bear Island. Unlike the grand castles of noble lords, their home was a simple stronghold, cold and unyielding, much like the people who dwelt there. The Mormonts were not a house of wealth, nor did they command great armies, yet they held something far more valuable: unyielding loyalty. Isolated upon their rugged island, they endured hardships where others would have faltered. Their warriors among the fiercest in the north. Their history, though not woven with the threads of conquest, was rich with honor. They carried a Valyrian steel sword, Heartsbane, a relic that had seen centuries of battle. Their women fought beside their men, for in the harsh lands of the north, survival did not favor the weak. One such warrior was Meech Mormont, a formidable leader who guided her house through troubled times. When war came to Westeros, her daughter, Lyanna Mormont, a child yet a leader wise beyond her years, took the mantle of her house. Small in stature but mighty in spirit, she stood before men twice her size and commanded respect with nothing but her voice and conviction. Though her time was brief, her name would be remembered, for she fell not in retreat, but in defiance, bringing down a giant as she took her last breath. With her passing, House Mormont, once a proud name among the North, faded into memory, its legacy carried by whispers and old songs. Farther south, where the lands were fertile, and the noble houses played their games with smiles rather than swords, House Tarly of Hornhill carved its name into the annals of history. Unlike the scheming nobles of King's Landing or the war-hardened lords of the North, the Tarleys were defined by discipline and unwavering military prowess. If the Tyrells ruled the Reach with diplomacy and charm, the Tarleys ensured their rule remained unchallenged. Lords of Hornhill, they prided themselves on their battlefield skill, their forces among the finest in Westeros. Their lord, Randall Tarly, was a man of steel, feared for his strict nature and respected for his strategic mind. It was he who led the forces of the Reach in countless battles, he who wielded Heartsbane, the mighty Valyrian steel sword passed down through generations. Yet, despite his victories, his greatest failure lay not in war, but in his own family, and his eldest son, Samwell, did not meet his harsh expectations. He cast him aside, forcing him into the Night's Watch to make way for his younger son, Dickon. But fate is a cruel master. In the fires of Daenerys Targaryen's conquest, both Randall and Dickon met their end, burned alive for their refusal to submit. And so, the house that prided itself on strength was left without an heir. For Samwell, though the last of his name, had sworn himself to a life where titles held no meaning. With no true successor, House Tarly, like many before it, began its quiet descent into oblivion. Yet for every house that vanished into history, another sought to carve its place in the future. House Hightower of Oldtown, one of the most ancient and influential families in Westeros, had long shaped the realm from the shadows. Though they did not wage wars nor sit upon the Iron Throne, their power was undeniable. Oldtown, the grandest city in the realm, was theirs to govern, and with it came riches, knowledge, and the citadel itself, the seat of learning for Meisters across the world. The Hightowers traced their lineage back thousands of years, their roots as deep as the foundations of their great lighthouse, which guided sailors from every corner of the world. It was said that their ancestors were among the first men to build lasting settlements, and in time, their wisdom granted them dominion over one of the most vital cities in Westeros. Unlike the Lannisters or the Starks, who commanded armies, the Hightowers wielded power through commerce, education, and faith. They were patrons of the Meisters, allies of the faith of the Seven, and shrewd players in the game of politics. Their influence stretched far, but it was during the time of House Targaryen that they truly left their mark. Sir Otto Hightower, Hand of the King, was a man whose ambition rivaled even the most cunning lords. Serving under multiple kings, he worked tirelessly to place his bloodline closer to power, arranging the marriage between his daughter, Alicent, and King Viserys Targaryen. Through this union, his descendants bore the blood of dragons, setting the stage for the Targaryen civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons. The Hightowers, ever patient, knew that true power was not won in battle alone, but in careful moves played over generations. As the years passed and dynasties fell, they remained, watching, waiting, ensuring that their name would never fade, while the Hightowers built their legacy through knowledge and subtlety. Another house sought dominion through sheer might. House Velaryon, ancient kin to the Targaryens, ruled the seas with an unmatched naval force. Though often overshadowed by the Dragon Lords, the Velaryons were no less powerful. For where dragons ruled the seas, their ships ruled the waves. With Valyrian blood in their veins, they were among the last remnants of old Valyria, their seafarers unmatched, their fleets the envy of Westeros. During the height of Targaryen rule, it was the Velaryons who ensured the Empire's strength at sea. Lords of Driftmark, they commanded vast riches and trade routes, their ships carrying goods, soldiers, and secrets across the world. Their greatest son, Corlys Velaryon, known as the Sea Snake, was a legend in his own time. He sailed farther than any man before him, amassing a fortune so vast that even the Lannisters paled in comparison. With his wealth and influence, he shaped the course of history, standing beside the Targaryens in times of war, securing alliances, and ensuring that the blood of Velaryon remained interwoven with the fate of Westeros. Yet as the centuries passed, even the mightiest houses waned. The dragons that once soared high above the seas fell, and so too did the power of their Valyrian kin. By the time the last Targaryens fought for the throne, House Velaryon had faded from prominence. Their legacy carried only a name. The seas, once theirs to command, belonged to no one, and the tides of history moved ever onward. As the winds of time continue to shape the realm, the rise and fall of these houses serve as a reminder that power is fleeting, that no banner flies forever. Yet, their stories endure, carried through whispers in the halls of great castles, through songs sung in the taverns of Old Town, through the lessons taught in the Citadel. And as you close your eyes, let their legacies drift through your dreams like sails upon an endless sea, their names etched in the stars above, waiting to be remembered once more. Would you like me to continue with part 5? # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 5. As the histories of the great houses unfold, we find that power, in all its forms, is fleeting. Some houses rise through wisdom, others through war, and some carve their names in blood. But there are those who find their strength not in swords, nor in crowns, but in the loyalty of their people and the resilience of their spirits. Among them stood House Reed, sworn bannermen to the Starks of Winterfell, yet unique among the noble houses of Westeros. Unlike the great lords who ruled from towering castles, the Reeds made their home in the vast and treacherous swamps of the Neck. Crannogmen, as they were called, were unlike any other warriors of the realm, smaller in stature, but cunning beyond measure. Masters of their land, they moved through the marshes unseen, wielding poison-tipped spears and guerrilla tactics that made them nearly impossible to defeat on their own ground. It was from this house that Howland Reed emerged, a man whose deeds shaped the fate of Westeros in ways few understood. Loyal to Eddard Stark, he fought beside him at the Tower of Joy, witnessing the birth of Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, the last heir to the Iron Throne. Though he never sought recognition, his role in protecting the greatest secret of their time ensured the survival of a lost lineage. His children, Jojen and Mira Reed, continued his legacy, guiding Bran Stark beyond the wall, aiding him in his journey to become the three-eyed raven. House Reed, though small in might, stood among the most steadfast allies of the North, their loyalty unwavering even when kingdoms fell and thrones crumbled. But for every house that stood in the shadows of honor, there were others that played the game of power with ruthless ambition. House Blackwood and House Bracken, ancient rivals from the Riverlands, bore a feud so old that its origins had long been buried beneath layers of war and bitterness. The Blackwoods, descendants of the first men, clung to the old gods, their lands rich with weirwood trees, and whispered prayers to the spirits of the past. The Brackens, on the other hand, had long since embraced the faith of the Seven, aligning themselves with the new order, scorning the old ways. Their feud, spanning centuries, had shaped the history of the Riverlands in countless ways. Their battles fought not just with swords, but with alliances, betrayals, and whispered conspiracies. Though their names were not as widely feared as the Lannisters, or the Starks. Their influence had helped shift the tides of war more than once. Even as the Targaryens ruled, even as Robert's rebellion reshaped the realm, their conflict endured, a testament to the unyielding nature of history itself. Beyond the riverlands, where the land stretched wide and the seas seemed endless, stood the great plains of the Westerlands, home to one of the most mysterious and least understood houses of the realm, House Dane of Starfall. Unlike their Dornish kin, the Danes carried bloodlines as ancient as the first dawn, their ancestry tied to heroes of old. Among them was Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, a knight of unparalleled skill, whose name was whispered with awe even long after his passing. He bore Dawn, the legendary sword forged from a fallen star, its pale blade said to rival even Valyrian steel. He was no mere warrior, he was a legend, and it was his blade that stood at the Tower of Joy, his skill that nearly bested even the great Eddard Stark before fate intervened. Danes were unlike any house in Westeros, their traditions older than many of the noble families who claimed dominion over the land. They did not simply pass their sword from lord to heir. The title of the Sword of the Morning was granted only to those deemed worthy, a tradition that ensured their legacy remained untarnished by weakness or unearned glory. Even as Westeros was reshaped by war and conquest, the Danes endured, their role in history never as conquerors, but as guardians of something greater. And so, as the houses of Westeros continued to rise and fall, as banners were raised and burned, as kings were crowned and slain, the legacies of these noble lineages endured in stories, in songs, and in the quiet whispers of history. The lessons of their triumphs and their follies, their honor and their treachery, wove the fabric of the realm, each name a thread in the great tapestry of time. As the night deepens and the winds of Westeros carry the echoes of forgotten voices, may their tales linger in your dreams, weaving through the mists of memory like the banners of a forgotten age, waiting for the next storyteller to awaken them once more. Would you like me to continue with part 6? # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 6, the passage of time in Westeros, is marked not only by battles won and lost, but by the stories that remain long after the warriors have turned to dust. Among these stories are those of houses whose fates were sealed not by steel, but by ambition, betrayal, and the unyielding weight of history. In the Westerlands, where gold flowed like rivers beneath Casterly rock, another house once stood as proud rulers before vanishing into legend house, Reign of Castamere. The Rains were second only to the Lannisters in wealth and influence, their stronghold a mighty fortress nestled within the hills, rich with gold and silver. But as history has often shown, power breeds ambition, and ambition invites destruction. When Tywin Lannister, then a young lord, saw the Rains rise too far, challenging the might of his family, he acted with the cold precision that would come to define his rule. He did not simply defeat them in battle, he erased them from history. Castamere was flooded, its halls drowned, its people slaughtered to the last. The only legacy house Rain left behind was a song, The Rains of Castamere, a chilling reminder of what happens to those who defy the Lannisters. But while the Rains were wiped from existence, other houses endured through sheer resilience. House Karstark, distant kin to the Starks, had long ruled the harsh lands of the north. Their founder, Karlan Stark, had been granted his lands after proving his loyalty to Winterfell, and from his name, Karhold was born. Unlike the Starks, who ruled with measured honor, the Karstarks carried the North's fury in their veins, their loyalty fierce, but not unquestioning. When Robb Stark called his banners, they marched without hesitation. But betrayal severed their bond when Lord Rickard Karstark, driven by vengeance, defied his king. For his crime, Robb executed Rickard, a decision that cost him the Karstark army and weakened the North's strength in the war. The remaining Karstarks, bitter and seeking survival, bent the knee to the Boltons, siding with those who had slain their own kin. But in the end, betrayal led to their undoing, and when Winterfell was reclaimed, the Karstarks who had sided with Ramsay Bolton were crushed. Their house, once mighty, faded, another name lost to the turning of the ages, while the North was home to houses that warred for survival in the Reach, where flowers bloomed and castles stood grand. Another house found its strength not in battle, but in knowledge, House Beesbury of Honeyholt. Though never a great house, the Beesburys had long served as loyal vassals to House Tyrell, their lands rich with honey and trade. Their legacy was not one of war or conquest, but of service, with members of their house often rising to positions of administration and learning. The most notable of their name was Lord Lyman Beesbury, a master of coin whose service stretched across multiple kings. Though age dulled his wits in his later years, his loyalty remained steadfast. In the days leading up to the Targaryen Civil War, known as the Dance of the Dragons, he was among the few noble lords to oppose the usurpation of Princess Rhaenyra's throne. His voice, though frail, was one of the last to speak for justice in a court consumed by deceit. His end came swiftly, silenced by those who found his presence inconvenient. And so, like many houses that served greater lords, House Beesbury remained a footnote in history, their contributions overshadowed by the wars that reshaped the realm. In contrast, House Strong of Harrenhal held a legacy marked by both power and tragedy. Once one of the most influential houses of the Riverlands, they rose to prominence during the rule of King Viserys I Targaryen, when Sir Lionel Strong was named Hand of the King. Unlike many who vied for power through manipulation, Lionel was a man of honor, his wisdom unmatched. But his line was not fated to last. His son, Harwin Strong, known as Breakbones for his immense strength, was rumored to have fathered the children of Princess Rhaenyra, an accusation that brought ruin upon his house. Fire consumed Harrenhal, taking both father and son, and though their deaths were shrouded in mystery, many believed it was no accident. The remaining Strong line was left scattered, and in time, the name all but vanished. Harrenhal, the Cursed Castle, passed from lord to lord, each one meeting an untimely end, as if the ghosts of House Strong lingered within its burned halls, whispering of the power they once held. But while some houses were destroyed by war and fire, others fell to more insidious forces, greed, ambition, and the slow decay of time. House Mooten of Maidenpool, once a respected name in the Crownlands, found itself trapped between loyalty and survival too many times. During Robert's rebellion, their lord made the fatal mistake of siding with the Targaryens, and when the war was won, retribution followed. Though their house was not wiped out, their influence waned, their lands shrinking, their power a mere shadow of what it had once been. It was a fate shared by many lesser houses caught in the currents of greater wars, struggling to stay afloat in a realm that showed no mercy to those who faltered. The history of Westeros was written in the rise and fall of such houses, in the names that once commanded armies, but now were nothing more than whispers in old tomes. As the night stretches onward, these tales linger, their echoes reaching through time. Some names are still spoken, their legacies carried forward by the last of their line. Others have vanished, their banners fallen, their halls empty. Yet the realm remembers, even if only in song and story. And as you drift into sleep, may these voices of the past weave their way into your dreams, carrying you through the histories of kings and warriors, of traitors and loyalists, of houses lost and houses yet to rise. Would you like me to continue with part 7? # you said. Next, # ChatGPT said. Part 7. As the winds of time carried away the banners of fallen houses, others endured in silence, their names spoken only in the quiet halls of history. In the Vale, where mountains reached for the heavens and castles perched upon sheer cliffs, House Royce stood as one of the oldest noble families of Westeros. Descended from the first men, the Royces bore a proud lineage that stretched back thousands of years, their sigil a reminder of the bronze-clad warriors they once were, before the Andals arrived and conquered Westeros. The Royces ruled vast lands, their warriors donning ancient bronze armor engraved with runes said to hold the magic of old. But with the rise of the Andals came the fall of their power, and though they remained lords of Runestone, they were no longer kings. Despite their diminished status, the Royces held onto their honor, standing firm as one of the most loyal houses of the Vale. Their warriors remained among the finest, their oaths unbroken through centuries of shifting allegiances. It was Lord Yohn Royce, clad in his ancestral runic armor, who stood as one of the few lords to question the chaos that gripped the Vale in the wake of Jon Arryn's death. He remained a voice of reason as the realm crumbled into war. Yet even the wisest men could not prevent the tide of change. Though House Royce stood strong, they were but another name in the long and unending game of power, their role that of guardians rather than rulers. Farther south, where the heat of Dorne shaped men as much as the blade, another house had long stood apart from the rest. House Ironwood, rulers of vast deserts and mountain passes, once called themselves kings of the Greenblood before Nymeria and her Rhoynar united Dorne under one banner. Before the Martells claimed dominion, it was the Ironwoods who held the greatest power, their armies vast, their influence unquestioned. Even after their kingdom was lost, they remained one of the most formidable houses in Dorne, their warriors known for their strength and discipline. Unlike the fiery passion of the Martells, the Ironwoods carried themselves with rigid honor, their pride unwilling to bend even in the face of change. Their long-standing rivalry with the Martells shaped much of Dornish history, their grievances spanning generations. Even as peace was forged, their resentment simmered beneath the surface, a quiet ember waiting for the right moment to ignite once more. Though the Martells ruled Dorne, the Ironwoods never forgot the time when they had been kings, and in their hearts, the memory of that power remained. But while houses such as the Ironwoods held onto the past, others were born in the fires of more recent wars. House Seaworth, unlike the ancient families of Westeros, had no noble lineage, no grand castle passed down through the ages. It was a name made not by birth, but by the deeds of one man, Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight. Once a smuggler who sailed the dangerous waters of Blackwater Bay, he became a knight not through blood, but through loyalty. In the service of Stannis Baratheon, he proved that honor was not reserved for those of noble birth. Though he had no land to claim and no great banners to fly, his name carried weight in the halls of power. He was the voice of reason when kings faltered, the hand that guided where others sought only to take. And when the Great War was over, when thrones had been won and lost, Davos remained, his wisdom valued even as the realm sought to rebuild. House Seaworth may not have had the grandeur of the Lannisters or the Starks, but in the end, it was not the name that mattered, but the man who bore it. As the histories of great and small houses alike wove together, the true nature of power in Westeros became clear. Some names were spoken with reverence, others with fear, and many more simply faded into obscurity, their banners lost, their halls empty. Yet, as long as stories were told, they were never truly gone. For in the minds of those who remembered, in the quiet moments when old songs were sung, the legacy of these houses endured, carried forward not by steel or coin, but by the weight of history itself. And so, as the night deepens and your thoughts drift further into the realm of dreams, let these echoes of the past guide you. Let the names of warriors and kings, of houses great and small, linger in your mind like the embers of a dying fire, their stories waiting to be told once more when the dawn rises. Would you like me to continue with part 8, the final part? #, you said. Next, #ChatGPT said. Part 8, the great houses of Westeros, their triumphs and tragedies, their ambitions and downfalls, are but chapters in the endless story of the realm. Some names linger in the annals of history, spoken in reverence or fear, while others fade like whispers carried away by the wind. Yet, for every house that has risen and fallen, the land itself remains, bearing silent witness to the passage of time. From the frozen tundras beyond the wall to the sun-scorched deserts of Dorne, the echoes of these noble families still drift across the world, shaping the future as they shaped the past. As we stand at the edge of history, where the names of lords and kings turn to legend, we look to those whose legacies endure not through conquest, but through the bonds they forged. House Tarth, known as the Sapphire Isle, was one such house, neither the wealthiest nor the most powerful, yet admired for its honor and beauty. Their lands, kissed by the eastern seas, glowed with waters as blue as gemstones, their people renowned for their chivalry and strength. It was from this house that Sir Brienne of Tarth emerged, a warrior unlike any other, defying tradition, standing among the greatest knights the realm had ever seen. Though mocked and doubted by those who clung to the old ways, she proved her worth not through titles, but through action. In the end, it was not gold nor lineage that defined her, but her unwavering commitment to duty, to justice, to the ideals that so many had abandoned. Beyond the Sapphire Isle, across the stormy waters, another house once held dominion over the seas, House Velaryon, the great seafarers of Westeros. Though their power waned with the fall of the dragons, their legacy endured, their ships once unrivaled, their names still whispered in the halls of Driftmark. Tied by blood to the Targaryens, they were once among the greatest allies of the Dragon Lords, their fleets carrying conquest across the world. But as time passed, their banners faded, their ships sailed less frequently, and the power they once commanded became nothing more than a memory. Yet, even memories have strength, for the sea does not forget, and the waves still carry the whispers of the Velaryons, waiting for the day their house may rise again. But not all houses sought dominion through steel and sail. Some, like House Rowan of Golden Grove, built their legacy upon wisdom and patience. Their lands, rich and bountiful, made them one of the most respected houses of the Reach, and though they never claimed a throne, their influence stretched far beyond their borders. They were trusted advisors, careful rulers, and skilled diplomats, their power drawn not from brute force, but from understanding the shifting tides of Westerosi politics. While others fought and fell, House Rowan endured, its roots deep and strong, like the ancient trees that grew in their lands. For every house that built its strength on wisdom, there were others that relied on the chaos of war. House Dustin of Barrowden, fierce and unrelenting, stood among the North's most formidable families. Descended from the first kings of the Barrows, they carried the fire of ancient traditions, their warriors feared on the battlefield. Though they were never kings themselves, their might could not be ignored, and their loyalty to the North was unquestioned. When war called, they answered, their swords cutting through the tides of history, their legacy carved in the blood of their enemies. And so, as the final echoes of these houses fade into the quiet night, their stories remain. For every house that vanished, another took its place. For every lord who fell, another rose to power. The Game of Thrones continued, as it always would, spinning ever onward, shaping the fate of those yet to come. And as you drift into slumber, let the banners of these noble houses unfurl in your dreams, their colors bright against the endless sky, their names carried forward by the winds of history. The past is never truly gone. It lingers, waiting for those who would remember.